Serious, Redditors from Lebanon or Beirut, how are you after the horrific explosion in the city? I was going to see a friend, was on the highway and suddenly the explosion happened. I was a few kilometers from it. I didn't feel the shockwave cause I was in the car with the windows up, thankfully no broken windows or damage to my car. Suddenly after the car started shaking and I have seen the huge smoke, I was still in shock. Saw cars in front of me lose it and hit a wall, pedestrians passing out on the sidewalk. Army everywhere. I was surprised they were there that quick. Maybe they were evacuating because of the fire? I seriously have no clue. Anyway, 30 seconds after the explosion, the friend I was going to calls me panicking and couldn't breath. He told me his brother was really close to the explosion and has hurt badly. Asked me to go to the nearest hospital. I turn around trying to go there. The roads are chaos, can't actually go anywhere. A few minutes he tells me he was able to talk to him again, and he is a hospital near the explosion. He couldn't get medical attention and to go pick him up and take another hospital. After 10 minutes of illegal driving, climbing over sidewalks, thankfully I have an SUV, I managed to arrive to the hospital. It was a war zone, blood literally everywhere on the floor, people fully laying down everywhere inside and outside the hospital on the streets. The hospital itself was in ruins, ceiling panels everywhere, windows all shattered, doctors and nurses running around in confusion. I locate my friend, he is in bad shape, arm all fucked up, legs covered in glass, a big chunk of his head missing. I convince a doctor to stitch him up quickly simply to stop the big bleeding, put on something on his head, and quickly take him to another hospital. He was fully covered in blood from head to toe, I swear I am not exaggerating. We get in the car, turn on my blinkers, and full on towards another hospital. There was confusion to which hospital I should take him. I decided on a hospital further away hoping that people didn't have time to get to yet so my friend would get medical attention. I drive like a maniac, my hand almost consistently on the horn, blinkers on, and waving to people all along the way. There were no traffic rules for me at the time, people got angry but I couldn't care at the time. We arrive in the hospital as packed. I hastily park on the sidewalk and walk to the ER since there were too many cars blocking the road. I get him inside. Judging by the looks of him, the doctor quickly talks to him and figures out what is hurting and what needs to happen. His family members arrived 30 minutes later. We stayed until 12 a.m. until he was admitted to the hospital from the ER and we went home. He is fine and stable. I'm Lebanese and I'm stuck abroad because of COVID. I was on the phone with my grandmother when it happened. You do not want to hear your grandmother yelling like she is about to die. Everyone I know and I spent hours making phone calls, texting people, "Are you alive?" Worrying when the other person took more than a split second to answer. We had ceiling to floor windows in my house, they're completely destroyed. Mom had to stay home alone all night and we were worried someone would try to break in because we live on the second floor. We were also worried about the fumes. This is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. There is only one main road standing between my house and the port. Thankfully, I left the apartment 10 minutes before to meet a friend, saw the fire, and thought it was something casual. Walked one street away, so one more layer of building away from the port, and sat and ordered some food outdoors. A few minutes later, we hear very loud rumbling, stand up to see what's happening from a better angle, and boom. The scariest moment in my life was seeing the blast come my way and not knowing what will happen next. My first impulse was to run away from buildings, my friend's impulse was to run into them to hide, so we ran in opposite directions. And then, glass and pebbles fell on me, and everything was covered in dust. I got minor wounds, and went with my friend to check on her boyfriend who lives nearby. Apartment was full of blood and we couldn't find him. Even in those moments I looked at her and said, "You just got the full Beirut experience," to which she responded, "Yes, I'm definitely ready to leave." She went to the nearest hospital to see if her boyfriend was there, and found out that he was transported to another hospital further from Beirut. I called my mom, and the moment she responds she is crying. She lives somewhat far but was worried about me and was glad I'm alive. I went back to check on my house, and the streets were like a war scene. People running everywhere and screaming, blood all over the place, rubble, and people fighting. Someone parked to get someone injured, and blocked the way on another car wanting to take someone injured to the hospital. The stairs in my building were full of blood stains and screams. Doors on all floors are out of place. Reached the house and it has literally imploded on itself as all the windows were closed. So, the house is gone. The building next to mine had 2 floors blown away onto the street, with electricity lines on the street amid the rubble. I also lost my car in the process as rubble fell on it. As I was packing the essentials to leave my house, The neighbor above me told me a lady in the building had her neck broken and needed assistance. We call for an ambulance but no response, so we call my neighbor's son-in-law. He says he's on his way. I take my stuff and leave for my parents' house. No cars anywhere near to take me. I walk for around a mile, and as I walk I see a beggar I always used to see nearby. He asks how he can reach North Lebanon where his family is, and asks for money to go there. Tells me his brother died as rubble fell on him from the building, and cries. I pass him some money, tell him we have all been horrified, and to take care. I find a taxi and go to my parents' house. They cry when they see me come in. I am still processing all what happened, and perhaps this is the reason I wrote this long comment. I can still feel the buzz in my ears, and watching the videos makes me shake on the inside. Lost everything, still processing. Still processing. My brother felt the shockwave 6 to 8 miles east a lot later than I did. I was about 2 miles south, but I managed to reach home without major injuries. I wasn't scared from a trembling building and shattered windows not cause him so great, but I didn't process what happened, saw the mushroom cloud and genuinely thought we got nuked. I didn't understand the blast and what I went through before I saw all the videos online. I got extremely lucky. Lived a kilometer away from the explosion. I left Lebanon 2 weeks ago to visit family. My house is completely destroyed and unlivable. My 2 closest friends were my roommates. One was in the bathroom when it happened, the other was outside walking back from work. They were sending me voice notes of what was going on while it happened. These 2 men are the strongest people I know, and getting messages from both of telling me to tell their families they love them in case anything happens shakes you. If they were in their rooms, I can't begin to imagine what would have happened to them. They're both safe now in the mountains. Thankfully no one I know is dead, just lots of injuries. I live just 2 miles away from where the explosion occurred. We live on the 10th floor of a high-rise building. My siblings and I were sitting on the balcony before the impact. I remember clearly feeling the earth shake and us calling out that there was an earthquake. We rushed into our living room only to hear the loudest bang I've ever experienced. My mother, who had seen the entire thing happen from the kitchen window, was hysterical. The moments after the deafening bang were followed by a gust of wind that shook all our windows, slammed all our doors, and shattered our neighboring buildings' windows. My family was freaking out and unsure of what had just happened. The idea that this was the first act of war was on everyone's minds. My younger sibling experienced a panic attack and my mother was inconsolable. I clearly remember feeling nothing, my emotions were empty, but I felt my knees shaking. I was so focused on making sure my family was okay that I didn't give myself time to process. It wasn't until after I had gone to bed till I realized how bad it was for me too. I had a nightmare about it that woke me up at 4 a.m. and any creak or thump in the night had me flinching. My family and I are physically safe, which is why we're making a trip to donate blood for those who weren't so lucky. We're physically fine, but we are definitely traumatized. This is unlike anything else and can hardly be described with words. The worst part was the uncertainty of what was happening. I live about 1.75 miles away from the explosion, and before the second impact the ground was violently shaking for a solid 10 seconds. Everyone felt like their buildings are falling down. And then the shockwave burst all the windows and doors open. All you could see is blood and all you can hear is screams. The scene really felt like it was from a post-apocalyptic film. Our people have been hit with so many heavy blows. We're known for being resilient, but this is too much for all of us. Just in a single year we've been through protests to overthrow the government, an economy crisis with prices of all products increasing uncontrollably due to our currency collapsing, a full-on pandemic with minimal planning by the government, and now with this explosion of ammonium nitrate that the government knew existed and knew how dangerous it was. We all went out to donate blood not knowing we shouldn't be inhaling the orange smoke because no one in the state cared to tell us. And to top things, hospitals that were accepting COVID cases and injuries from the explosion were collapsing themselves and all the patients had to be moved to other hospitals. We lack crisis management on the state scale and it showed yesterday. We all woke up today and were wounded. Hundreds are dead, thousands are injured and so many properties are destroyed. With our current economy crisis, there is no funding to rebuild what's been destroyed, the port included that the country relied on for most of its imports-based failure of an economy. We're facing homelessness and shortages in food and fuel. We feel helpless as darker days come. Sorry for the rambling and sorry if I didn't make any sense. Well, in my case I'm fine. I took all the earthquake procedures my family practices once a month in case of an earthquake, then left the building as soon as the shaking stopped. Then came the horrifying part, the smoke, and then boom, the shockwave. I was deafened for about 30 seconds and got a few minor scratches on my arm, but other than that I'm fine. can't speak for at least 4.5k others though sadly. Because of the rising COVID-19 cases the past week, I asked my company yesterday if I could work from home for the meantime to keep my family safe and they agreed. The explosion happened at around 18:05, at which time I would still be in the office. My workplace building collapsed from the inside, and people rushed out while the building was falling on top of them. I can't shake off the feeling that I pretty much just escaped death, and it is surreal. My aunt's house got destroyed, and I had to go pick her up. There was shattered glass everywhere, dust, and debris. But the shit that gets you is how silent and loud, if that makes any sense. Being in the middle of it actually is. All you hear are sirens, echoing alarms and screams of people looking for each other. I am outraged because of this government and its incompetence. Not once did it manage to do anything good for the country. I wanted to go down and hang all of them on the streets, including their puppet master Hassan Nasrallah. I was in the living room on my PC. The table started to shake. My cat sprinted outside the room. My partner was taking a nap in our bed next to the window and got startled with the first sound wave. She ran outside the room and I ran to meet her while telling earthquake. We met halfway. At the same time the second bang reached us. The whole house shook. We live approximately 4 kilometers from the blast area, and the whole house was shaking. Windows exploded. Doors were blasted from their hinges. The ceiling shook. We spent a moment looking at each other to check if we're injured. I went back to the bedroom and saw the bed covered in glass shards big as my arm. My partner was literally seconds ago lying in this bed. We looked for our cat, he was hiding under a couch quivering of fear. We called our family and close friends to check on them. People started queuing outside the Red Cross Center near my house to donate blood. The loss of lives transcends everything else. But one cannot take a stroll in the street without realizing that this city is cursed. The sound of broken glass with each step you take takes its toll on you. It forces you to be reminded of this reality. We are expendable. We are worthless. We are not human. We do have the right to live in dignity. Or even the right to die in dignity. A lot of us are full of hatred at the moment. We are not afraid of death. It's here. Its shadow passed over the city. I think some Americans who lived through 9/11 would relate to Beirut at the moment. The city is a wreck. This hatred is aimed at the ruling class. The political establishment that ruled over Lebanon for the past 30 years. Westerners have a hard time understanding how we live without electricity, or a working garbage disposal system, etc. Trust me, we do not understand it as well. I've been here for the past 31 years. And I don't understand how we still don't have electricity all the time. Or how a ticking time bomb was sitting in our port in the middle of our city without anyone doing anything about it. The level of negligence is astounding. If God exists, He does not know about Lebanon. I was using my computer with headphones on and felt the building start to shake. I take off my headphones and join my family in the other room thinking it's an earthquake. Suddenly the opening in my window started sucking in air extremely quickly to the point my right ear started ringing. Luckily for me and my family none of our windows broke because they were all open prior. If they had been closed they would have all burst from the pressure of the shockwave. Unfortunately very few people in Beirut shared my luck as they had their windows destroyed, buildings collapsed, and ceilings fall on them. For some info I live around 2.5 miles away from where the explosion happened, but luckily my family and I are okay. We got off luckier than others and my heart is with anyone who suffered even one broken window from this whole incident. By the way, for any non-Lebanese person reading this explosion happened because a warehouse full of fireworks caught on fire and started exploding. Right next to it there was roughly 2 tons of ammonia and sodium nitrate stored without precaution thanks to our wonderful government. The fire spread to the chemicals causing the huge explosion you see in videos. No one is sure how the firework fire started, but some say workers were welding metal right next to it if that's true. The Chief of Customs has the responsibility of storing these volatile chemicals safely, but this is what incompetence does. This should give foreigners a glimpse at the incompetence of our government, all appointed through being a warlord or pure nepotism. The Chief of Customs was appointed with the support of our president for being related to him, who was also appointed through support from other political parties, who all gained power from the Civil War, so you can see how incompetent every single one of them is and the close to zero qualifications they have. I was on the balcony chilling with my parents when we saw a fire. I live about 5 kilometers away from the blast zone, so we were safe, and a few seconds later, we saw the mushroom cloud. The entire building started shaking for a few seconds. I knew what was coming. We rushed inside, and while getting in, the shockwave reached us. The strongest gust of wind I've ever felt. As soon as we went in, my mom had a breakdown. remembering the horrible days of war. The only thought that crossed our mind was the thought of war. What if it's a bombing? What if we're going to war? A few minutes passed, I started shaking, texting my friends, telling them I love them. Mom was still having a breakdown. We tried to call the family, but calls weren't connecting. We kept trying to reach everyone. No one was answering. We kept trying to reach everyone. No one was answering. When the cell network came back online, we called everyone. Only minor injuries, everything was under control. At least that's what we thought. Dad received a call from the warehouse for the company he works for. The door is destroyed, with no way of closing it. So much wine and money stored in the warehouse. He was gone for 7 hours, then came back. They're on guard duty. Today everyone is working as one, cleaning everything. It's like a war zone here. It's going to be hard to recover from this. I keep remembering the horrible explosion and the shock. But I know we'll get through this as one.